Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Stay on Your Bike podcast. And this episode is going to be amazing because I'm interviewing one of my ex-team riders and also one of my favorite and best lifelong friends. Welcome to the podcast, Matti Lehikoinen.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. It's a
It's all right.
privilege to get invited to such a unique club. So,
Not at all, mate. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
yeah, that was close enough. That's good. Yeah.
So not like how I used to say it, Matti Lehikoinen.
No, not quite like
Not
that.
quite.
No, that was good.
Okay, good. Cool. First off, how are you, Matty? I know you had a bit of a fall the other day. Out of all the massive crashes you had back in the day on your bike, do you want to explain what happened to you yesterday?
Yeah. So I had a bit of a mishap back a couple days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. I had a concussion while walking on my driveway, not wearing a helmet. Yeah, just got out of the house. It snowed maybe like 20 centimeters, so like about 8 inches overnight. And there was just like we have like a bit of a down, like a steep slope from the main road to the driveway, and I was walking down it, and then I just stepped on like this, there was car tracks, like compact snow. As soon as I put my foot on it, I just slid and like hit my head, like fell on my back, and first thing I hit was like right to the back of my head, and didn't get knocked out, but I was like noticed right away, like, okay, things went right. And like I had this real funny, like like a tingly feeling on the left side of my face, and then like my left arm stopped working for a bit, like it kind of not didn't stop working, but it kind of like jammed.
Yeah.
And then then I went to the emergency room, and got all checked out, and they was like, yeah, you've had a concussion. And so I don't know, with only 2 days into it, so I don't really know if I'm going to have any symptoms afterwards. When we were racing, there was no such thing as a post concussion syndrome, so
No.
we'll see. But yeah, I haven't felt that great in the last couple of days, but we'll see. Only time will tell. But quite ironic, and considering the crashes that I've had on my bike, I actually haven't had many concussions, if any.
Yeah.
And like I remember getting like a proper knocked out, like out cold when I was about 18. But I've never been like properly knocked out. Even when I had like my really bad crash, I have pretty like vivid memory of it, which even though it was quite traumatizing, but it probably was for the better, because obviously I didn't have like a brain injury or anything like that. So, but yeah, um, pretty light intro to this, I would say.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah, other than that, I'm doing good.
good, good. Well,
Yeah.
see how the podcast goes. If you start feeling unwell or anything, then we can do it another day. But yeah, let's see how we go. And I'm glad
Yeah.
you're not too bad.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I rang you during the day because I was feeling really bad during the day, but now I feel all right. So
Cool. Okay. Well, if it's okay with you, I'd like to get into the start of how you got introduced into push bikes and bike riding. So I guess like most of us, you did that as a kid. So would you like to explain, where you grew up and how you got introduced to biking and how it all started for you?
yeah, so I grew up in a city called Espoo, which is right down south of Finland, right next to the capital of Helsinki. And yeah, I was always, I tried a lot of other sports like soccer athletics and yeah, a bit of golf and, but there wasn't anything that really got me that excited until like, I was always on my bike.
Yeah.
I remember when I was playing football as a kid, I would have my bicycle, and instead of going to the soccer training, I left home and went right into the woods, like while I was supposed to be at the football training, and never went there. And then I ended up, going back home and all like covered in mud, and mom would be like, "Where you been?" It's like, "Yeah, just took a bit of a detour," but obviously there wasn't any cell phones and stuff like that, so the coaches couldn't really get hold of my parents, and like Matty didn't show up to the football training. Like, where's he been?
Yeah.
And then yeah, like then my parents started like seeking out like how, obviously this kid is really into bicycles, like are there bike clubs or races, or it was 1994 when I like joined like a bicycle club.
So how old were you when you got your first bike?
I was probably, I would say I learned to ride without training was maybe at the age of 4 or 3.
Yeah.
And I I do have like maybe I can send you a picture. I have this red bike with like a top two padding, and it said BMX. I
Wow.
think the brand was called BMX.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was like my first actual bike. And well, yeah, there weren't any kick bike, or not pedal bikes, but what are the ones that kids use nowadays? Like, um,
Um, Scooters and stuff.
no, not like the when they which don't actually have pedals, but the balance
Oh, but
bikes.
yeah, balance
Yeah,
bike.
they didn't exist. So
Yeah.
obviously I have like tricycles and whatnot. What the
Yeah.
kids in the 80s did. But anyway, and then yeah, then I do remember like we had a summer cottage, and the bike always had to be taken along. Like I would not leave unless I got to take my bike with me.
Cool.
And
And
yeah, then they
was
like at the time they went like we don't we didn't have any BMX tracks, or there wasn't any like BMX races or anything like that. So I actually got into road riding to begin with
right.
in the 90s,
Yeah.
and yeah did yeah, it was like time trials and road races. And obviously like my passion was more in the mountain bike side of things.
Hmm.
But then the club that I joined in, I believe it was 1994. So I was, yeah, I just turned 10 when I joined the bicycle club. And yeah, that was the very beginning of it. And then raced road and did a few triathlons and cross country and even cyclocross races when I was a kid.
Wow.
So I would say, considering where I ended up, a very unusual background where it
Yeah.
all
And
started.
what, I mean, was it like in the UK when I was growing up, all my friends in the village kind of had BMX bikes, and we'd go off in the woods and and on waste ground and build jumps and stuff. Was there that kind of scene in Finland as well, or was there not really that kind of scene?
I would I would say not really. Like I had a few mates at school, and well, I had a friend, and he had like a motocross background.
Oh yeah.
So we would go out and like trying to like long distance jump our bikes.
Yeah.
And I remember obviously him having a 80s and 65s background. He wasn't afraid to jump.
Yeah.
And then I was just trying to mimic, like, geez, like he's going that far, like I'll try to one up him. And so
Yeah.
we'll just have this bank and try to launch our bikes until I think he ended up like snapping the front end of the bike, obviously
Right.
because they were just not Walmart bikes, but like cheap kids bikes,
Yeah.
which were definitely not designed to be jumped.
Right.
But so I would say, yeah, yeah, we did go into the woods and like trying to jump our bikes
Yeah.
and yeah, ride them on trails. So that was like years. I would say probably from like the age of 7 or 6 until like I turned like 10 and actually found like, okay, you can kind of be a bit more organized and there's some events and this and that going on that you can take your bike to. So
Cool. And then, from there doing the road cycling and stuff, was that something that you wanted to pursue and try and become a, road racer, or how did you transition into doing the mountain biking?
uh I would say it was a bit of a coincidence that my parents just happened to sign me up for a club, which was, you know, a road bike club, and they provided me with a road bike. But my intention was to be a mountain biker. Like I wanted to do mountain bike races. But then since I got given a bike, they were like, well, you can go to the road races as well.
Yeah.
And so that was what I, let's say, did more than actual mountain bike races. But I always had interest in um, in the mountain bike side. Like I wasn't really that into the road riding scene. Um, and yeah, probably well then that I would say that like a few years went on when I was about 12 or 13, I got introduced to Chainsmoke, the
Oh,
movie,
yeah.
and obviously watched it not on repeat because you had to like rewind the
Yeah.
tape, but until the tape was like worn out and you couldn't any like watch it anymore. And
Yeah.
then it's got the very infamous first segment of Sean Palmer and like the whole intro, and I probably remember all the songs. and
Yeah.
and there were a few other. There was another movie called, maybe it was a Wheel Deal or something like that. I
Don't know
remember
that
it's like
one.
yellow VHS, and yeah, watched the hell out of that. And I was like really into like the mountain bike scene, and that kind of draw me. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. Like I want to ride downhill.
And
But then
was that a
go on.
thing in Finland at that point? Like, was there many people doing mountain biking and racing downhill?
There was definitely there was a few people that were doing the downhill World Cups. Of He was a Kona factory rider at the time, called Antti-Pekka Laiho,
Okay.
and there were also like a few other guys, and then Katja Repo. You probably
Yeah,
remember Katja.
of course. Yeah.
So she was riding at the time, and I um, like read magazine articles and stuff
Yeah.
of her and saw like okay that what they were doing. So I was aware of downhill pretty
Yeah.
much from quite an early age. But I do remember like my mom was very much against it because she said it was dangerous, which looking back now, she was maybe quite right.
Yeah.
So my poor mom, she had to go through a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, so they were a downhill scene, and I remember going to a downhill race to watch probably like 1996.
Mhm.
So there was like a cross country race which I was taking part of,
Yeah.
and at the same event there was a downhill race happening. So we went to watch some of the downhill practice like after our cross country race.
Yeah.
And so that was, I don't know exactly where it all sort of sparked and how I kind of got so into it. But there was something that really drew me towards downhill, and then that's what I ended up doing or switching to after probably when I was about 15.
Okay.
So I
And
did race cross country and road for probably good 4 or 5 years.
okay. So I imagine that, you know, both those things gave you a good base, fitness and good bike skills to go into downhill.
Yeah, I think it really, since we don't have any mountains and it's quite flat around me
Yeah.
or like where I live down south, and uh, it gave me like a good understanding of training, like
Yeah.
pretty early on, and I had like a structured
Structure,
like
yeah.
training plans already when I was about 10 or 11.
Wow.
And but there, yeah, it was, you go ride your bike for like 30 minutes every other day, but obviously I would go ride it like as soon as I got back out of school or back home. I would just go out and ride my bike. So it wasn't anything like super, let's say, professional or
Yeah.
anything like that, or it wasn't serious. But it gave me an understanding, like the fitter you are, the more likely you're gonna do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't have to, like, when things started to get a little bit more serious, I understood the training side of things,
Sure.
and I'm sure that helped me a lot to get to the point, or to where I ended up.
Yeah. And so what year and where was your first downhill race and what bike did you have?
First downhill race was in 1998,
Okay.
and I had this pink or red. It was actually a BMX brand called Kuvahara.
Kuhara.
Kuhara, yeah,
Yeah.
with the RSD high five triple clamp forks
Wow.
and V brakes, and I do, and at the fork, that was pretty funny. Like when I got the bike, the fork was absolutely rock solid. Like it was full of elastomers, so
Yeah.
it didn't move one bit.
Yeah.
And my friend at the time worked at the bike shop, and he had the same fork before, and I was like, yeah, we can modify the fork. So we took all the elastomers out and just replaced them with a like a Manitou, just coils.
Springs.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just springs in the forks.
Yeah.
So it's just like a pogo stick
Yeah.
with no damping, no oil in it, nothing.
Yeah.
But it worked like a treat because it actually moved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it definitely worked for a 14-year-old,
Sure.
which he probably weighed at the time, or I weighed, I don't know, 50 kilos or less.
Yeah.
But towards the end of the season, the forks actually snapped off, like right from the bottom of the triple clamp. So it
Wow.
just goes to show like how like poor design and how like shitty the bikes were
Yeah. There was a
at the
lot of
time.
bikes broke back then, wasn't there?
Yeah. And like I went through probably 3 or 4 chain stays
Yeah.
on the bike. And because we bought it brand new, I always got a new one from the warranty.
Yeah. And was that from like a local bike shop? Did they deal with Kuhara bikes?
Yeah, yeah. Kuwahara was pretty like famous or popular at the time
Okay.
in Finland.
Wow.
So even like we don't have any BMXs, but um it was like a proper mountain bike brand. So they made
Wow.
like locally mounted bikes. I can trying to dig through some archives
Yeah.
and
If you
send
want
you a
to.
photo of my actual proper downhill bike.
Yeah.
And then yeah, that was 1998. So I
And
did a season on that, and then
where was your first race? Was that like local to you, or did you have to travel a long way?
it was quite local. It was 2 hours a drive, 2 hour drive from here. So I did the national, like the Finnish national series,
Okay.
my first season. So yeah, that was maybe 5 or 6 rounds,
Okay.
and I was the only one in my class with the suspension bike. So I
Wow.
won every single race by, I don't remember, but I did win them all by like at least 5 seconds or
Brilliant.
more.
Yeah.
So, but I was quite like I was always comparing my time against the older riders.
Yes.
So even though, let's say I won my class, which was like the 13 and
13 to 14 or 15.
yeah, something like that. Yeah. I would compare my times to the next class.
Yeah.
We're like one is a youth. It was like a 16 to 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
So it's like a year before you actually move to proper
Junior.
like juniors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be like quite competitive against them. And
Yeah.
they all had like disc brakes and full suspension bikes.
Right.
So yeah, I was quite looking like really comparing that and always like wanted to beat them, even though I like won, so I was like quite competitive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool.
But I remember like I had a chance to go to Åre for the Scandinavian champs back in 1998, but
98.
yeah, but I didn't have disc brakes, and everybody had disc brakes, and somebody recommended that since you don't have disc brakes on your bike, it might not be safe to go.
Right.
Which was probably true because I've seen some footage and it was more or less the same track what they used for the 1999 World Champs.
Sure.
And it was absolutely pissing down rain.
Yeah.
And I heard from people who went and didn't have disc brakes, the brake pads would last a run.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to replace them.
Yeah.
So I'm a poor little bike, definitely wouldn't handle like it was a world's track for the following year.
Yeah, the pink Kuara was not quite up for the job at that place.
Definitely not. No. I'll find a photo of that.
That would be great. And so obviously from there you were, you won all the races in your category. Did you used to follow the World Cup racing at that point? Like, did you watch it on the TV or anything?
I did. I watched like more. I don't know if I watched all the World Cups.
Yeah.
But like my friend, or actually my cousin, they had a Eurosport.
Yeah.
So he like tape recorded.
Yeah.
All the broadcasts, and we used to watch the races.
And it was the Grundigs.
Yeah, the Grundigs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can look at, let's say, a World Cup results from 1998 or 7 or 1999, and I know all the riders.
Yeah.
Like I will have like a, not a vivid, but I would say I could recognize them and their faces. But if I look at the World Cup results from last year, I could maybe name 15, 20 riders, but definitely not all. So I would say I was a nerd, and I really like to, like look at the results and know the riders. And there was a British magazine called Mountain Bike International, I think.
Yes.
So I always used to go and buy those, and I like followed the British scene as well. And then but yeah, well, now we kind of got carried away a little bit, but yeah, definitely I was geeking out a lot, and especially on the bikes and the parts and the components and the bits and bobs. So I'm definitely
that was part of the fun with it all, though, wasn't it? All the new stuff that was coming out all the time, and the bikes were improving as well as the racing. It was for me, it was the same. It was really exciting to see the new bikes and stuff.
Yeah, and I'd say like from 1996 to 1998, the World Cup race bikes took a huge leap.
Yeah.
In terms of like technology, and they like improved a lot. Don't know how the tracks and whatnot went, but the bikes took a massive step.
Yeah.
In terms of reliability and performance.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that was, it was quite exciting times to like follow, the RockShox Boxer came out for public in first time in like 1998, and so yeah, I was definitely like, don't know the prices anymore, but
Yeah.
probably at the time I knew like all the bits and bobs and prices out of the back of my head,
Yeah.
for each and every part. So, but yeah,
Brilliant.
did that. Cool.
And so, obviously you knew about, you were following the bikes and the racing on Eurosport and stuff. And what year was it when you first got to go to a World Cup? And can you explain how that happened and where you went to?
My first World Cup was Maribor 2001.
Yep.
But there were actually quite like a number of things that happened before that. So if I rewind a couple of years, so I already got to do in 1999, I got selected to the national team to go do the European champs at the
Wow.
age of 15
Wow.
to race in juniors. And that was like my first time when I got my feet wet to the international scene and actually ever got to see a mountain, and first time on a plane, and got to see the small little Coca-Cola cans and what they had on the plane, and it was exciting. And other thing was like when we got to Barcelona, some of the other kids were laughing at me because I saw a palm tree for the first time, you know, and they was like, "Have you never seen a palm tree?" I'm like, "No, I've never been abroad ever."
No way.
So anyway, so that was, I think it was Bruno Zanchi that won the European champs, and there were quite a few like already like international. There was maybe a World Cup happening at the same time, so or Nova or something. So the top riders went there. Like PT wasn't there, but I
Right.
do remember like Tracy Mosley was there, and to name a few like top riders at the time.
And
The
sorry, what
Christian
year was that?
1999.
99. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'm pretty sure that I was just so excited to get to ride on a big mountain, and there was a chairlift
Yeah.
that all I remember was just doing practice runs, laps after laps after laps,
Yeah.
probably like 15 runs a day on a can of Coke. You don't need
Yeah.
much food at the age of 15.
Yeah.
And I was just super excited to ride a proper track. And
And not
then
on the Kuara.
no, I was on the Scott FXDH.
Okay.
So it was the 1998 model, but now I got the disc brakes. Do you remember like RockShox used to make these cable actuated disc brakes,
Yeah, I think so.
which were absolutely terrifying things.
Right.
Apparently,
I
I
never had
was so
any.
light and small, so I never really had that many problems. But the brake pads were probably, I don't know, like half a size of post stamp. They were like
Yeah.
tiny, tiny little things.
Yeah.
And whenever you needed to like bleed them, you just had to chuck them away, and they gave you a new one from warranty because they were like impossible to bleed.
No way.
And then it had a Rock Socks, like a super deluxe shock,
Yeah.
which was this tiny, tiny little thing, and it would blow up probably every other run.
And this wasn't the Scott with the big long saddle, was it?
No, I had that the year after.
The
This
year
was
after.
no, actually it did have the mounting for the no, yes, and I did have the big saddle on it.
Right.
Yeah, the massive with the twin seat post.
Yeah.
Yeah, hideous looking thing. But so anyway, but it was pretty cool. It was like a full spec with all D Max wheels and like the kind of the top stuff. So
Brilliant. And were you sponsored at that point, or was that something that your parents got you?
my parents got it for me, but I got like a deal from the distributor.
Okay.
So the Scott distributor sponsored, or maybe gave like a discount on the bike. But it did cost me a leg and an arm. And I do
Yeah.
remember like, when your parents don't have that much money, they definitely made sure that you felt guilty that you got something so expensive,
Yeah,
and you had to work for it and appreciate it.
sure.
Um, but so yeah, that was 1999.
And
So
how did you get on in that
I
race?
think I was maybe 20 something, 23rd, 25th.
So pretty
So
good.
yeah, I did pretty good considering like my age. And that was at the time when for some reason I was allowed to race the European champs, but I couldn't race the Aura 99 Worlds. I would have got selected. Like the
Yeah,
Finnish team had 2 spots, and I would have got selected to the 1999 World Champs team, but UCI didn't allow me to race.
right.
Um, but I was at the, I went to see and watch the race
Oh
on
wow.
site, so
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. Definitely like, and the the thing that I regret the most from the 1999 Worlds is that I got to see Palmer for the first time in person,
yeah.
but I was so scared that I didn't go speak to him or go get his autograph or anything.
No way.
Um, and I thought like I get to see him next year at Worlds,
Yeah,
but then he stopped racing,
yeah,
so I never saw him again until I got massively starstruck at Anaheim Supercross in 2005,
yeah,
and I was there with late Monk,
yeah.
and I asked Monk like, can we go to Palma and get his autograph? And I was like 20 something at the time, but I just got like massive. I was racing World Cups and I got signed for Honda, but I was still like, obviously, like he was my hero
Yeah.
at the time.
Many people's hero.
Yeah. So that was, a pretty funny backstory on seeing Palmer, but I never went to see him. I wasn't quite brave enough as Needles was at
Okay.
the Stellenbosch World Cup, because apparently Needles got his jersey and his mate got Palmer's pants
Wow.
because he just went, "Oh, can I get your jersey?" So, but I didn't speak a word of English either, so that definitely didn't help.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, I mean that's something that's, must have been difficult for you as a young Finnish rider as well, traveling into Europe and predominantly everyone kind of on the World Cup circuits speaks English. Was that a big challenge as well? I take it other than all the bike riding.
I would say in the beginning, yes, and um, I like really wanted to get to know like because I had a subscription for
Yeah,
the mountain bike international, I believe. It was like a downhill, like a gravity oriented
yeah,
British magazine. So I did remember, and I mean, I knew all the UK riders. Like I knew about Donny and
yeah,
Mark Bowman, and then there was it Sam
yeah,
Ferns, but who sadly passed away.
yeah,
But yeah, so I like and Stu Thompson, and so like I've read all the they had the UK race results and stuff. So
And were
I
they
kind of
your age group?
they were a few years older than me,
Okay.
but that was something that I also like. Okay, if the UK riders can do it, and I could see like their results when they were just breaking into the World Cup scene,
Yeah,
and I knew like some of the riders had already raced World Cups as a juniors, I believe,
yeah,
and I get to race against them at the 1999 in European champs. So I
yeah,
kind of had like a little bit of a where I could gauge where
yeah,
my speed was,
yeah,
and based off of that, I kind of set myself a goal that when I get to race the world champs in 2000 in Sierra Nevada, my goal was to be top 10.
okay.
That was like, and there was another, like a Finnish guy that got 12th at the junior worlds in Aura
Yeah,
the year before. and I knew like, okay, I had been like a little bit faster than he was at the nationals.
Yeah.
So I was kind of gauging off that, like, okay, I can set a goal to be top 10, which I ended up ninth
Ninth.
at the.
And that was the same because I was at that race as well, and that was
Yeah,
when
I remember.
yeah, and we first saw Mick Hanna burst onto the scene, and I believe he got second in your age category,
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
and it was a French rider that won the race. Was it
Julian Pumans.
Humans? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I remember, and
yeah,
so that I mean that was that time like every year the juniors was a stacked field, so coming ninth was a really good result.
yeah. I was over the moon,
Yeah,
and they were. uh, Speak of Mick Hanna, I thought he was a course sweeper,
right.
because he didn't have pads or knee
Yeah,
pads. He was just on his board shorts
yeah,
and just a t-shirt, helmet,
yeah,
which was no goggles,
yeah.
and he had like a Santa Cruz Super 8 with like half, I don't know, some sort of like a
A guard.
derailleur protection thing and like a full rear disc wheel
Yeah,
and massive monster tees. And a few days went on because practice used to be like real long, like 3
yeah,
days. You could just do laps and laps and laps and wear yourself out.
yeah,
And probably it was only after qualies because Mick, I'm not sure if he didn't qualify fastest, but he qualified up there.
yeah,
And I was like, hang on a minute, this score sweep is absolutely flying. Like you could see, like he was going fast in practice,
yeah,
but um, until qualies, I didn't even know that he was part of the race.
yeah. Sure.
And then um, it it snowed
Yeah,
the
snow
next morning, and
morning of the race.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
and there
was.
was also Camelini was there,
Yeah,
and I think there were quite a few like riders that made a career out of it, made it into the big scene.
yeah,
Geordie, there's another funny backstory. Geordie, I was at the bike wash at Worlds in Sierra Nevada,
yeah,
and I happened to be next to Geordie, and he was already like this, grown up, massive Canadian grizzly bear with a huge beard and
yeah,
everything. I'm like, yeah, I'm racing juniors, and I was like, holy shit, I'm never gonna be able to beat that guy because he was just, he was a grown man already at the time. So
yeah.
yeah,
But
and so that
what a lovely guy though.
yeah, such a I do miss him, and
Yeah,
such a shame that there's another one that kind of left too early, but hey.
yeah, yeah. So obviously you got ninth at that race. Did you then get to do any World Cups that year? Because I think back still then the junior there wasn't a junior category at World Cup, was there? The juniors were just mixed in with the elites, and you added at the World Cups.
um I was allowed to race because I was 16, so I was allowed to race world champs, but I wasn't allowed to race the World Cups.
Okay.
um at least that's how I remember it, because it was a Camellini, or Julian Camellini was also racing the world champs at the age of 16, and
Yeah.
Sam did the year after, like,
Yeah.
so he, like, we got to do junior worlds 3 times.
Yes.
But I'm pretty sure that for the first official junior year you were allowed to do the European champ, oh, I mean the World Cups.
Sure.
So then, like, yeah, I mainly raced back at home. So that was that Worlds, which was in early on.
Yeah, it was
No.
early on in the year, wasn't it?
Yeah, yep,
It
yep,
was an
yep. That's
Olympic
right.
year.
Yeah.
Was it an
And
Olympic year?
it was Olympic year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then
And
I raced also like a European champs again. That was in Vars.
yeah, I did that as well.
Yeah. And
Oh, I like
and
that track.
yeah, I thought it was real good.
Yeah,
And that kind of gave like a bit of a confidence. Like, okay, I'll be racing here World Cups next year because I knew like the world, or maybe I'm not even sure, but there was a World Cup the following year
yeah,
in Vars in
yeah.
France.
Yes, there was. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
back then the European Championships it had a lot of the big World Cup heavy hitters at it, didn't it? It's not like nowadays where you get the odd few riders. I remember that Vars Europeans. I think Petey won it, and
yeah,
Nico was like on the same second, and Pascal and Basta Beaver and all the top European guys were all at the European Championships.
yeah, there were. I think that might have been possibly one of the last proper European champs
Yeah,
until like recent years.
yeah,
Now it's kind of picked up again, and European champs I think they went away for a couple of years that they didn't even have them. So
um,
that was quite quite a shame because
yeah,
it was it was a it was a good race, and you get a title from it,
yeah,
and so a jersey and everything. So that was yeah.
yeah,
But I do, yeah. I think they used to do dual slalom as well,
yeah.
and I think Petey might have won dual and downhill,
Could well have
possibly.
done. Yeah, I can't remember. For some reason, I don't know why I can't. I kind of get the 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 World Cup the year after and that European duel confused. I know the
The
duel at
two
the
old,
World Cup got cancelled because of the weather.
that was a year after.
Yeah, that it was. So it's the World Cup where the duel got cancelled. Yes, I do remember it now. I remember the slalom.
Yeah, and then they
Yeah,
did two duels
yeah,
in Capri,
yeah,
follow like later in 2001.
yeah.
But hey, with two old men, we're trying to remember things which happened 24 odd years ago.
I know it's crazy how
So
how long, but now you mention it, I actually remember racing the duel at the Europeans. I got through to the quarterfinals, and that was as far as I got.
yeah,
But yeah,
but
and
I go on.
and so how at this point, obviously you were getting some great results. Were you getting some interest from some of the big teams and programs that are out there? Because obviously a young fast junior, teams look at your results and seeing if you're going to be a contender for the future.
Not at the time, but I heard there were things like sort of happening in the background. So people like Antti-Pekka was talking to a few people, and Katja was talking to some people as well. That there's this fast Finnish junior that might be worthwhile, paying attention to. And then it it was 2001 when I got to do my first World Cup in a Maribor.
Yeah.
And that was actually when I got introduced to the global racing staff. That was
Yes.
the biggest, hottest team in Orange. And they had Minar and Missy and Sean McCarroll. And,
Yeah.
it was the biggest team at the time, or the biggest new team.
Yeah.
And I got Martin had already sort of noticed me at Junior Worlds and European Champs because he was the technical delegate,
Yes.
and he came over and said that you know come see me at the team tent. And looking back now, things started happening like extremely quick,
Right.
and all of a sudden there was like quite a bit of pressure. Like I didn't speak much English, and then I got introduced to, and remember, like the global racing team used to have host those parties
Yeah.
for each rider. So I got like invited to go to one of the parties, and I'm like, all right. But then like my Finnish friends went, so I was
Yeah.
there like alone, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, things are happening quick, and well, I've been there at my race, like I didn't qualify, but I was just riding like a headless chicken.
Yeah.
Like if I look at some of the splits, I'm pretty sure that I was top 30
Wow.
in the quali splits, and then I crashed right at the finish, maybe like less than a minute from the finish line. I crashed
Right.
and didn't qualify my first World Cup. And then the same thing happened again the following weekend in Vars. That was, well, round 2, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, okay, if I take it easy and ride it safe, I'll qualify quite easily. And I was like 83rd or second, or I just missed out.
Yeah.
So I like took it too easy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there was, yeah. But obviously, like I remember, like some of my, like the Finnish team members were like, when I got invited to go to the global racing pits, and were like, yeah, definitely, like if they want to sponsor you, you're like, you should jump on the opportunity.
Sure.
And I took a lot of, like, I couldn't handle the pressure. Like I think I would have been better off if I would have just gone to the World Cups with my friends and kind of did it
Sure.
like how I was used to, like being around by
Yeah,
the
your
people that
friends
I knew, and they were like, yeah, we're just sort of,
comfortable with.
yeah, comfortable with, and see how it goes.
Yeah. And
Um,
so when you was at that Maribor World Cup, were you sort of riding for the global team then?
no, I wasn't. I was
No.
riding for the Finnish distributor, still on Scott bikes.
Still on the Scott bike,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. That was a twin, maybe the twin shock bike, but
Yeah,
yeah, like a funky looking white
yeah.
Scott
I remember
with
that.
American flag on the top tube.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And and
Um,
so then did you, because I kind of remember you kind of joined onto the global team halfway through a season, didn't you? Is that correct?
yeah, it was a bit of a, so mid 2001. So the World Cup went on, it maybe went to America or to the North American rounds, or because we
Yeah,
were there camping, like on the camper van.
yeah,
And so we stayed in Europe with my friends and did some of the, it wasn't Max's Cup, but
what was it?
anyway, there was a race in Todnau. Do you
Okay.
remember such place in Germany?
Yeah, I never went, but I remember it.
Yeah, so we went to like a race in Todnau, and actually went to Morzine for the first time. But there was just like the Plenty track, and that was it.
Yeah,
No, and I I spoke to somebody probably like a decade later. He came up to me like, I remember you being at the bottom of Plenty, like we parked, like we camped at the bottom because there was absolutely nothing happening in Plenty.
yeah,
And it was me, my friend, and I would say 5 other riders. That's it.
yeah,
Doing like Plenty main laps. Oh, like, yeah. And after being like doing a few, maybe we did a race there or something, but we going we were on the road for quite some time in Europe and living the Vanzak's life, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, it wasn't like a cool and fashionable. It wasn't social media, so you were
So
just
that's how you did it,
doing
wasn't
what
it?
you had to do and getting by.
Yeah.
And it was again European champs. Now this time it was in Livigno
Okay.
in 2001, and I ended up winning the European champs
Brilliant.
as a junior.
Yeah.
Like, and that was like the first time, I was just surrounded by my friends and being like comfortable. And another funny backstory, I had a massive crash, a huge crash the week before, and I got flown to hospital with a helicopter
Wow. Where was that?
in Tottenham.
Okay.
So when I did a track walk at the European champs, I was on some crutches and I could like barely walk because I'd hit my leg so hard that it's just like, well, I'll just try to ride. And then as the week went on, I started to get better, and then I was able to race and somehow ended up winning.
And who was on the podium with you then?
Camellini was second.
Yep.
And I think he was another French guy. I don't remember his name, but Nico Vink might have been fourth, or he was somewhere up there, fourth, fifth.
Yeah.
And there were a few other guys. Corrado Heron won the elite.
Yeah.
And there was maybe Philip Polk, and there were not all the fast male riders were there, but all the elite riders, but there was some. And then fast forward a month or two to midway through 2001, it was Raicng World Cup.
Yeah, that was my favorite track. That and Nevergal.
That was absolutely phenomenal track.
I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it was insanely good track. So I ended up snapping the poor bike, the Scott, in half.
Right.
In practice, I think. Didn't have a spare bike. And Cesar Rojo had it, was injured maybe in Japan, or there was a race in Japan, or some other race, North American race in Japan.
Yeah.
So I got to ride Cesar's bike.
Maybe Grouse Mountain that year.
Could have been, yeah. So I got to race on Cesar's bike as a loaner, and I was like, oh my, because it was a factory bike, and
was this the
this was a global racing race bike.
Yeah.
That I got to borrow because I like snapped my own bike.
Yeah.
And it had the black box fork and shock.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away how good the bike was compared to like my rattly Scott. So I got to do the first day of practice on like the black box stuff.
Yeah.
But then since I wasn't a black box athlete, it got taken away the second day. So I was on a standard. I think I still had the shock, but not the fork.
Sure.
But it was still like miles better than what I was on before.
Sure.
And I think I ended up qualifying 12th.
Wow.
Like right up there.
Yeah.
Like, with the top guys.
Yeah.
And that was only my third World Cup.
Yeah.
And I was, like I said, things happened so quickly. All of a sudden, I was at the top of the hill. I didn't even know what to do at the start, what the guys were doing. I'd seen it on Eurosport what the top dudes were doing, and then all of a sudden I was there with like Nico was there and Pascal and Craig and all the top riders, and then there was me, just like.
And this is
myself.
2000. This is 2001.
2001, yeah.
So I'd have been there. That was my best ever qualifier.
Yeah.
So we'd have been up there together.
I don't remember the starting area, but I remember I had to like ride these like not gold trails, but it was like a really good track to start.
Yeah.
And then there was like a flatter area.
Flat area where the start
Yeah,
was.
where the
Yeah.
start was. So like I was so excited that I actually qualified at the World Cups. I didn't like care about the race.
Sure.
In like obviously I did, but I think I crashed like 3 times during the race,
Yeah.
like a lot. But I wasn't disappointed. I was just super happy that I qualified.
Yeah.
You know, that was like one, uh, let's say one step ticked off the bucket list.
Sure.
And then, did you race Caprune the following week?
2001. Yes, I
It was
would
like
have
a real
done.
mudder.
That was the one that was that
That was Minar won that one.
the
It
one
was his
Greg
first
won,
win.
and
Yeah,
Gracier had his muscle suit on.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I never really liked Caprune for some reason.
If you look, remember how much pedaling there was in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's
Like
what.
it wasn't the same track that was for the worlds. He
No,
had a different finish, but he had to cross, like
a
pedal
road.
across these hills, which was a bog,
Yeah.
and you could like barely move.
Yeah.
And I think the track was like 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
It was huge. So anyway, uh, I ended up 16th,
Wow, brilliant.
yeah, in that race. And
Still on Cesar's bike.
yeah, still on Cesar's bike. And so that was obviously something which was like incredible.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
still only 17 years old,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know where I qualified, but I do remember like being
16.
16. Yeah.
That's a really good result.
But I was devastated because I think prize money went from 15th and on, and it had apparently moved because the prize money the
Used to,
previous years were top 20.
yeah, and then they cut it down.
Yeah. So I like obviously would have been huge because by the time we'd probably driven like 10,000 kilometers on the van and blowing all the money on parts and this and that. So
Yeah, the $150 might not have cut the mustard. Last we were at Capron and you got 16th at Lausanne, and then we was at Capron.
Capruna got 16 and I
Sorry,
qualified. Yeah.
you got 16th at Capron. Sorry, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then okay, so that's an amazing result. What was that the last World Cup of the year? I think it was that year, wasn't it?
I think there was 2 more rounds to go
Oh,
because
was there?
yeah, because I was still going through high school and I couldn't get to go to the last 2 races. And
Okay.
there were actually there was a Maxis team at the time, the Spanish Maxis team. What
Yeah.
was it? I don't remember um the the staff, but they approached me, and then obviously Global Racing, you know, were in talks with me, but they had signed. Mick Hanna was racing
Yes.
juniors that
Yeah.
year, and he was absolutely flying, like
Yeah.
getting podiums at World Cups and doing like really well. And he was obviously definitely the favorite to win the worlds
Yeah.
in 2001, no
Yeah.
doubt about it. And then, so I didn't get to go to the last 2 rounds, and I think Mick got hurt. Oh, I know, like, yeah, Mick definitely got hurt. I don't know if it was Montsanan or the,
Ah, yeah, Monson was the last round that year. Sorry, yeah.
yeah. And so then I got approached by Global Racing to be a fill-in rider
The Worlds.
for Worlds, yeah. And
That
that's
was
where
in Vale.
things, Yeah, in Vale, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when things got really interesting, let's say. So I got approached by Martin Whiteley to be a fill-in rider for Worlds to replace Mick,
Yeah.
and I got offered a contract for 1 month, and it was basically the terms was to win Worlds and get a massive contract for the following year, or there were still bonuses for top three, I believe.
Yeah.
But the deal was to win Worlds and get a contract for the with Global Racing for 2002.
And what if you didn't win Worlds?
Then it would have been automatic that I get signed. But then I ended up signing with the team, but obviously the deal was a bit different.
Okay, so they offered you a place for 2002 on the team, but it was your salary was depending on if you won Worlds or not.
Always at the time on the table, there was that if I win the Worlds, I would get a decent salary or a good salary. And then I think the bonus was $20,000 to win the
Junior
Worlds.
Worlds.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
And think about being a Vanzak, living in the back of a camper van and paying for your tubes and then all of a sudden, all I could think of shit, if I win the Worlds, I can buy a brand new Golf GTI. I'll be turning 18 next year. and yeah, so obviously, yeah, it didn't go according to plan.
So what happened at that Worlds then?
I think I qualified second.
Yeah.
Second of, I qualified right up there. Obviously Sam was there, G was there, Camallini, Ben Corey. So it was a stacked field.
Yeah.
And I think Sam was approached to be that fill-in rider as well, possibly.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but that's kind of how I got told.
Right.
I think Sam did the 2 World Cups before Worlds. I'm pretty sure that he did, or at least one of them.
Okay.
So anyway, so yeah, I ended up winning it. I just couldn't handle the pressure. All of a sudden, being I was at Caprune and the races, I was still living in the camper van. I got a little bit of support from the global team, but now all of a sudden, I was in the same accommodation with Missy and Greg and the whole team, and I wasn't.
That's a lot of pressure at that age to a contract depending on if you won the race. That's at World Championships. That's a lot of pressure for a young rider.
Yeah, and I was just so out of my comfort zone.
Do you wish that offer hadn't been on the table for that race? Do you think, or do you think things
I think it would have been better if or at least if my parent, obviously I was under 18, so my parents handled the contract. I think,
yeah,
to some extent, if I was never told, just go and do and race and do your thing.
yeah.
So that definitely the pressure got the best of me, and I just couldn't perform. And the whole week was, the 9/11 was happening, and then then it was still it was in the air whether or not they're gonna hold if the race is gonna go on.
Sure.
Because I think all the other events in all of North America was cancelled.
Yeah.
Because of 9/11. So
yeah, I remember I'd actually made the GB team that year, but I got hurt a few weeks before at a Norba in Vermont and didn't didn't go to Vale. I flew home just after, and then just when 9/11 was happening, like it was crazy.
Oh right, yeah, yeah. That was, and like what was it? Like it was my first time in America as
Yeah,
well, and such a culture shock.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it was. So yeah,
Oh,
going back, it didn't go to according to plan. So I had a huge crash, and then after the race, I was just like, since when the pressure went away and it was all like done and dusted, I was just puking in the hotel, just like reacting to the
the whole thing.
effect of pressure.
Yeah,
And when it all um what is it? Yeah, it was like relief when it was over. Obviously, I was
yeah. It was all built.
immensely
All that
disappointed, but
anxiousness had built up inside you, and then it
yeah,
was all
exactly.
over.
Yeah.
And uh, stepping in, for a team, that doesn't happen a lot. How were the other riders with you when you were kind of just stepping in and replacing one of the regular riders? Were they all really nice to you? Was some of the people nice and others were a bit standoffish, or how was that for you?
I would say most of them were like really welcoming. Um, I remember like Missy being like really nice to me, but I was just shy and starstruck, and
Yeah,
you know not feeling like super comfortable being around with, like, okay, this is sort of normal,
yeah,
trying to be around these people. And then there would I don't think there were anybody that was sort of not trying to be helpful.
sure.
But being all of a sudden in a team environment and having team meetings and this structure that they had to go for
Hmm.
a morning ride, and they had this coach or like a physical coach at the time that I think every morning you had to go for like a spin, and it was just really weird. Like I bonded really, really well with like Sean McCarroll
Yeah,
straight off the back.
yeah,
And we still, to this day, like we we keep touch through like
great.
Instagram. And
Yeah,
it was really cool. I got to reunite with him, and I think it was half year World Cup
yeah,
maybe 10 years ago. Maybe I wasn't racing at that race, but Sean was there.
yeah,
And yeah, like you know, we properly got to have a beer and sit down and talk some old BS
yeah,
um,
yeah,
at that race. And obviously, 10 plus years had gone by, and I'd learned a little bit more English than I knew at the time. And
no,
so yeah, it was really cool. And Cesar, like he wasn't there, but then the following year I got to be like teammates with Cesar, and Greg was there, and Markov. And so
yeah,
yeah, there were a lot of like high profile names
mm,
on that team.
absolutely. And
Um,
so,
and
what happened
going
that,
to the following year,
yeah,
um, I got signed with. Do we have a now? The connection is gone real bad.
yeah,
Yeah, now it's better. Now
yeah.
what did you say?
So, yeah, so moving into 2002, you signed a contract to ride for the Global Racing full time.
Yeah, that's right. So I still got to sign a contract with Global Racing for the following year. Obviously, money was a bit different, and then I think the team went through like a restructuring because 9/11 happened, and stock market collapsed, and there was a lot of things happening. So the budget were a lot smaller than it
Previous
originally was
year.
supposed to be, I think. So, but I was pretty much expected to win the junior worlds from like the first team camp, and
in 2002.
in 2002, yeah.
Wow. So
And
pretty full on the team, like, you know, the signing riders to win, not just to have good results.
yeah, like we had a first team camp in Morzine before the first World Cup in Fort William 2002. And
Yeah,
at the team camps, some of the staff members were like, yo, when are you going to win the Worlds in September? I was like, ugh! I just choked. And I was
that's
just like,
crazy.
okay. So,
And not like light-heartedly joking sort of thing, just that's what was happening.
yeah, it was like, okay, yeah. And then, like I said earlier in the podcast, that each rider got to have a party of their like nationality, and like the Finnish party was at Worlds because it was like, yeah, it will be like a celebration at the same time when you win the Worlds. And I'm like, great, pressure's on.
Yeah.
I did good results that year.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was 20th in Fort William,
Yeah.
and then I had a few like an odd top 20, top 30, like in elite, and I was
Yeah.
still a junior. So if you look at it, like I
Yeah.
had some like really, really good results.
Yeah.
But Sam ended up winning the worlds.
I mean, your category was, you know, where they're saying when you win the worlds, you know, you've got Sam and G Atherton, just to name two people in your category at Worlds.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Mark Beaumont was there. He
Mark
went on
Beaumont.
to win 2 World Cups,
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's not.
had a long, great career. Needles was there. Justin Leo was there.
Yeah,
Uh, who else? Camellini.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's super
He's so
stacked year.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's crazy. So, and then, so where did you do the full World Cup season that year in 2002?
No, I only did the European rounds.
Okay,
So
and was that in your
maybe
contract just to do the
yeah, it
European?
was just like because I was still a junior. It was still like in my contract to do the European rounds.
Sure.
And obviously I suffered with like homesickness, and because it was a massive culture shock. Like I didn't get to speak my native language to anybody.
Yeah.
Um, there wasn't internet really, or I didn't have a laptop. You couldn't like text, or have a Skype call to
Yeah.
speak to your like friends and stuff. So
Yeah.
um, it was pretty tough year.
Sure. And who did you kind of hang out with? Who were your sort of best friends at that point on the race circuit?
Um, like I said earlier, like I don't like um we rode a lot together with like Sean and and um and Cesar, and
Yeah.
then obviously like Greg
Yeah.
as well. But like Greg is extremely competitive, and he went on to do like and be the GOAT, and have like an absolutely amazing career. But you could already at a young like at me at young age, I could tell like he's super 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 competitive. So
Mhm.
he kind of it was more towards like keeping things to himself,
Sure.
and keeping, if he had an ace in his sleeve, he would definitely
Keep it to himself.
hold it till the end.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've heard that off a few other riders that have, been on teams with Greg, and you know, uh, everybody's different, aren't they? Some people share everything, and other people keep the cards close to themselves, and maybe that's why he's had the longevity in the career that he's had.
Oh, absolutely. Like it just goes to show like he is the most successful rider of all time. So
Yeah.
you got to be like every athlete, you got to be selfish to some extent, and
Sure.
to be to go your own ways and
Yeah.
far and beyond.
Yeah. And so, what happened at the end of 2002? What did did you have a 1 year contract or did you have a multi-year contract?
I did have a 1 year contract, but then the team kind of folded after that,
Yeah.
2002 year. So
Yeah.
I was still riding like under the global colors in 2003, but it was myself, Needles, Lindsay Klein, this Australian kid, and Cesar.
Yeah.
So it was like we didn't have a mechanic or a soigneur, so it was we were just traveling in a sprinter van and had an easy up tent basically.
Still
So
on orange bikes.
it was still on orange bike. So it was like, the bike was good, but going from having a mechanic and getting support and then almost like a privateer program, but like a lot of teams folded
Yeah.
in those years, which was quite tough because that was my first year as a lead rider. And
Yeah.
then like Petey was without a ride, he had to set his own team with Orange and Lopes,
Yeah.
and I think Volvo Cannondale folded. Like Cedric was on that Siemens Cannondale thing, and
Yeah.
so there was a lot of like high profile riders without a ride. So me being an up and coming first year lead rider was more or less
Sure.
impossible to get a ride.
Yeah. Sure. And
And
and how did that year end up for you? What results did you get that year?
I had around maybe 20s, 30s, not like I didn't have any standout rides, like nothing super good. I ended up ninth, I think, in Grouse Mountain when it rained, the
Yeah.
one that Rich Houseman
Gary Houseman.
won. Oh, Gary, yeah, Gary won.
Yeah.
And then Ivan Olego Moreno was announced as a winner a
Yeah.
couple months after, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was ninth there, I believe. But the season was really short anyway. It was like only 5 World
Yeah.
Cups.
Yeah.
And Caproon, where it was real mudder. It was like a short Caproon,
Yeah.
which Vasquez ended up winning, and Rennie won the overall.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
week after Lugano Worlds, so like I think I crashed at Worlds, didn't do that great, so I won the Scandinavian champs, but I don't think I had any standout rides. And then the following year, 2004, I was a privateer on Orange.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I wasn't racing all the time then, but I was still following it and going to the odd race.
yeah.
Yeah. And did you
And
just remind me? Did you have what was the gear you rode in? Because it was like you were like in orange gear and stuff, weren't you?
I had it was like a black gear with like it said Orange as
Yeah.
the brand Orange,
Yeah.
and then Oakley, like a super baggy shorts.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah. So it was like Orange / Oakley thing.
Yeah.
I was fully supported by the Oakley factory
That's
for
great. Yeah.
goggles. And then Orange hooked me up with some bikes, and I think I got like parts from the Shimano distributor and fork, and and then we ended up traveling to World Cups. Anybody that knows cars or Mercedes, it was a W123. It's like the model type,
Yeah.
an old Mercedes ambulance.
No way.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. And then that was proper Van Zach's setup. So like we would sleep, like I would sleep underneath the bikes, like under the bottom brackets.
Yeah.
And then my friend, we would set up a hammock from the roof, and then the trunk would be fully open to give him shelter from the rain. And then we would like back it into a car, and he
Yeah.
would sleep there, and I would be under the bikes. And let me just a second.
Yeah.
So actually, for a memory, I happen to have
No
one of
way.
these ambulances as a toy car.
That's
Uh,
brilliant.
somebody got it for me, and
Awesome. Kind of looks a little bit like the Ghostbusters car.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And oh, there are probably a few people that remembers the car.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have a single photo
Oh,
on that trip because obviously it was digital cameras were too expensive to buy, and
yeah.
phones didn't have a camera. And maybe, I don't know, if anybody has a photo of the setup, please send it to
Send
me.
it in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And
Um,
how, how did that, how did that change in the sport? Did that affect did it affect your racing, your outlook on downhilling for the future? Obviously you've gone from racing for that global orange team to back sleeping in your car. Did that affect you in any way, or were you just still as keen just to go to race the World Cups and wanting to achieve your
I was,
goals?
I was, I was still like super keen to race. Um, and like really, uh, we have to like rewind a bit, but I never thought that I would get to where I was to be a professional ever. That was
Yeah,
in my mind. But
sure.
then, little by little, things started to be a little bit more like achievable.
Yeah,
And then having had like a few World Cups where I did really well, I started to like believe in, my hunger built, and
yeah,
I set like high goals to myself that I, first wanted to qualify and then
yeah,
get a top 50 top 20 and so on.
yeah,
Um, so it was it was pretty hard to going from having a team and team setup and tents to sleeping in the back of a van. But then I get to be like with my really good friend
so
and
you're having fun
being
as
like
well.
super comfortable and happy racer is a good racer.
Yeah,
And I got to like kind of go back to the roots and almost reset and start all over again,
yeah,
which it kind of should have been right from the beginning, like that way. And I
yeah,
think maybe the outcome, ifs and ifs and ifs, maybe the outcome would have been better. But then I had my first real top 10 in Schladming
yeah,
um, after sleeping, like packing up a tent, which was getting flooded. Like we slept on a cornfield,
yeah,
and tent was getting full of water, and we're like, oh bugger that, we'd gotta like pack up and go and find a hostel. Like this isn't working.
yeah,
So we ended up booking a hotel, and it's like, okay, let's book a hotel for the race weekend, and ended up being 10th, which was
brilliant.
G1 that race. And
Yeah,
that track was something else. It was, I think to this day, it's one of my favorite down tracks.
brilliant.
And to do that on like a not factory suspension, like my suspension was off the box,
Yeah,
nothing special. Like I remember feeling like Mark Bowman had a very similar orange setup, but he
yeah,
was like under the orange truck, and Petey and Andy Kiffin I think was looking after him.
yeah. The
And one time I
Orange
felt
Royal
like
team.
sorry.
It's the Royal Orange team.
Yeah. And once I felt like Mark's suspension, which was the same, like fifth element shock and a RockShox boxer. And I was like, oh my God, this thing is like so much better than what I'm on. Like it was like plush and sensational feeling bike. And then I got on that raggedy, rattly, let's say, piece of shit. I ended up 10th. I was like, wow. Like,
and then what happened from there? Then did you start getting approached by some other teams again?
Then I had a few good results. I think I ended up 11th overall.
Yeah.
I had like a couple 7ths and a few top 10s that year.
That's really good.
And then I got approached by Honda.
Yeah.
And
this is Martin Whiteley's program again, the same as the global program.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it was like Martin was running the team, and then it was like supported by the Honda factory. So Honda gave budget, but Martin run the team.
Yeah.
And when I got the news that I was going to be on Honda, I was obviously like, yes, no, I got back on a proper team and back on a proper bike, and then I got to be teammates with Greg. And I thought, we'd be able to like feed off each other. And when I rode the bike for the first time, and I was just like blown away. Like in my mind, I thought there's nothing that's going to be holding me back, because I was like, okay, I'm on proper brakes. I had good tires because the year before I rode Nokian Gazalotis, which were made out of recycled plastic.
Yeah.
and
did you get I
got to rewind now a little bit more. It was a ground, well, we raced in Calgary.
Yeah.
And I got a set of, because it was raining, and I was on these hideous Nokian tires, which were absolutely rock solid.
Yeah.
And somebody gave me like a used set of Maxes for the race.
Okay.
And I just couldn't believe how grippy they were.
No way.
And I ended up 7th in that race, and I was just like blown away how good the tires were.
Yeah.
So anyway, going back to Honda, when I knew like, okay, I've got good tires from Max's, and I got proper working suspension from Showa and a mechanic, like this, now this is a restart to my career. Like nothing's going to be holding me back. Like this bike is so fast and light, and it was what's this place like close to Las Vegas? I think it was Boulder Canyon. Boulder City. Yeah. So we were there testing, and I just couldn't believe how good the bike was.
So obviously, yeah, you've got this Honda bike with the Maxxis tires, the Showa suspension, the mechanics. I mean, everybody's going to want to know the answer to this, Matty. You had a factory orange bike, and then you've got a bike that Honda HRC have made. You'd rode the Scott and obviously the Kuhara must have been right up there with the Honda. But was the bike that much better, or what was so good about it?
I think how would I put it? When I first rode it, I noticed how light the bike was.
Yeah, I remember.
That was like
it was
that was the
light.
first thing I noticed. It was so light, and like the maneuverability on that thing was just something else. Like because of the weight and the way the suspension worked, you were able to like literally put it almost anywhere, or at least that's how it felt like. And
what do you think the main reason for that was? Because it was just a single pivot frame, wasn't it?
this is yeah, it was just a single pivot bike, so suspension is dead simple. And I don't think the bike necessarily was anything spectacularly great. But the Showa suspension, like, was, I would say, that really made the bike for what it was. And then the fact that the center, like the all the masses of the bike was in the middle.
Yeah.
So it gripped really well, like in cornering and on the braking. It pedaled like a dog shit.
Why was that, do you think?
Because it just had so much drag. The chain was a high pivot, so the chain, like, it didn't have like a proper cog. It had like this little pulley wheel, or like
Yeah.
but it dragged a lot.
Yeah.
And then you had the internal cassette and the internal chain. And then the other thing, because there was no cassette in the back or derailleur, the back end of the bike was extremely light.
Yeah.
Like, that was one of the first things that I noticed, like how easy it was to place your back wheel,
Yeah.
and like sort of like maneuver the bike, sort of to adjust the angle
Yeah.
of like where you're cornering. That was something which really made it stand out in my opinion. And then
And
and then
was the Showa suspension noticeably, did it work different to the RockShox suspension you've been on before?
obviously, yeah, like I remember having like the proper like black box forks, which were sensational. But then I rode like a out of the box standard shock, which I don't even remember if I got it serviced like more than once throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
So it's probably like sticky,
Yeah.
and a boxer, or like any suspension 20 odd years ago, wasn't particularly great.
Yeah.
And I've the Showa technician, when they took the forks apart, they always tested it when they put the lower, it was an upside down fork, so they put the stanchion into the fork. There was so little friction that the lower leg would free fall out of the outer tube.
Yeah.
And they would build it, like rebuild the shock at least every race,
Yeah.
most likely at least twice. We had a fresh set of forks for every single race run, because the outer, or like the lower leg, was actually made out of carbon fiber.
Wow.
And it was wrapped with, like, well, it's not tin foil, but like wrapped, that it it would have like a proper, like a slippery finishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, surface. And so yeah, that I wish I kept the shed of the suspension, or or you could put it on another bike, like a modern bike, to
Yeah.
see what it would be like.
Yeah.
And have the Showa technician to set it up properly. I think it would be
Incredible.
I don't think there would be anything better than that. Like,
Yeah.
it was insane. Like, we were once in Corona, California, at the Showa factory, and like our suspension was getting worked on this one bench, and there was Carmichael suspension on another.
No way.
And then the Japanese technician with his broken English went like, "Your suspension more expensive than Ricky Carmichael's suspension."
Yeah.
We're like, holy shit. But obviously it was all carbon fiber and
Yeah.
magnesium, titanium, and like really like finicky, lightweight materials, where, well, I'm not saying motocross suspension is basic and light, but it's a lot more robust, and
Yeah.
probably not so difficult to make than the bike stuff that we had.
Definitely. And did you, when you signed for Honda, did they show you all the internals in the gearbox that we didn't get to see like straight away, or did they just get you to ride the bike first with the cover on?
I think obviously this is the gearbox had to be worked on more or less every day because there was so much like moving parts and drag.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did get to see it like very early on, and it was like a well-kept secret, but I don't think anybody believed that it was technically a regular cassette with a mech.
Yeah.
It was kind of simple. Obviously, it was complex, but it was dead simple.
And who come up with that concept? Do you know?
I have no idea. Some Honda Japanese fella, don't really know.
Well, I mean, it was obviously to this day that, a lot of the downhill super fans, it's their favorite bike of all time, and it was the enigma of the bike, and the 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 secrecy of it all was super exciting to everybody on the outside. And then obviously you guys got great results. The bike looked amazing, and just being a Honda HRC bike, it was phenomenal. But obviously that program didn't last too long. Can you just explain a bit about the results you got on the bike and how that program was, and then how it came to an end?
Yeah. So originally the Honda program started in 2003, I believe, and then it lasted until 2007.
Yeah.
And so my soon as I got on the bike, I had like a string of seventh places,
Yeah.
maybe 3 or 4 consecutive seventh places,
So good results.
starting from 2007. And I was pretty upset about it because I really wanted to get on the podium. I
Sure.
didn't necessarily want to win, but I wanted to get on the podium like really bad.
Yeah.
And like I said before, Schladming was something else. So 2005 Schladming, it was actually Sam's first win.
Yeah.
And I was flying high on the confidence, like, because I knew like I'd finished 10th on that
Wow.
hideous thing that's never been worked on the Nokian tires.
So you had
And
the knocking tires on when you got that result.
yes, literally made out of recycled plastic,
Yeah,
like
I remember them.
rock solid. Like you can
Yeah.
go get any supermarket tires nowadays. I'm sure they'd be better.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I was like flying high on confidence, and my speed was just building up. I knew I was riding extremely fast.
Yeah.
And then I got told by videographers and photographers and other riders that you're really riding well, you're going fast. And even like Scott Sharple said to me, like, we were like looking at some of your riding and you were flying.
Hmm.
And that boosted my confidence even more. So what I ended up doing is riding even faster.
Mike Jones style.
Yeah. And uh if you look up on Roots and Rain the results, Sam won, I'm dead last, but I'm actually up on splits on Sam quite a ways away.
Until
And
where did you crash?
uh like after I think it was one split.
Okay.
So like after the first and only split, like maybe it was a half bit far, maybe halfway down the track.
Wow.
But ended up absolutely destroying my shoulder, like
Right.
properly. And that was, let's say, that was the beginning of the string of the injuries.
Yeah.
Um, and so anyway, I ended up riding the whole season with like taping the shoulder together, and then I had to have a shoulder
What
reconstruction.
what had you done to it?
I think it was the rotator
Rotator
cuff
cuff.
and some like ligaments.
Yeah.
So it was proper job. So I had to have like an open surgery and a keyhole surgery to get it to get it refit or
Yeah.
rebuilt. So from there and on, my season was a bit of a struggle. I had some eights, and I think I was sixth in Fort William. Still, like
Yeah.
I still had great results, but I
Mhm.
was like really like fighting an injury
Yeah.
the whole year. And then until soon as the season was over, the first thing I did was to get it fixed. But I
Yeah.
was like too afraid to, because I was on a 1 year contract to, you know,
Right.
realistically, I should have packed it in and gone to the surgery straight away, get it
Yeah.
fixed. But somehow I managed to like,
Hold on.
ride through the pain and get on with it.
Yeah. Fair play.
Um, and then, yeah, then come along 2006, I had the shoulder fixed. I actually had to do a mandatory military service,
Ah, yeah, I
which
remember
is
this.
mandatory in Finland. So I did that between the 2005 and 6 season, while like right before I got my shoulder fixed. So I got my shoulder fixed. I was kind of like hanging through the military because like I didn't have to carry backpack and this
Yeah.
and that, and I was able to do rehab there. And but I didn't ride a whole lot that off season, and that year I ended up I think sixth overall,
Hmm.
and I won my first World Cup and had my first podium
And that was in
in
South
Brazil.
America, Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was let's say that was a phenomenal week of bike racing. One of my all-time favorite memories.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant. And
and
so
yeah,
did that then give you a big boost in confidence winning that first World Cup?
oh, massively. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like you can.
Was that your first podium
That was my first podium,
and a win?
and it was a win. Yeah, so I did. Uh, yeah, I was. Hang on, I was fourth the same year
Okay.
in Schladming. So I
Okay.
had another podium. And yeah, I think it was pretty cool because it was me, Brendan, and Greg on the podium in
Yeah.
Schladming. And then we were all went on to be teammates the following year in
Yeah.
2007.
So so in so what would you be saying to all the the current World Cup guys that are going, pretty much to New Zealand for the whole winter training, going, all over the place. Just swerve that and go and join the army for a couple of months.
um, I would have definitely gone to New Zealand, preferably, no doubt about it, rather
Yeah.
than being in the woods, sleeping in the tent, and shooting some guns and yeah.
Maybe it made you
But it
tougher
was
for that World Cup win.
pardon?
Maybe it toughened you up for that first World Cup win.
Possibly, yeah, or maybe I was just in a happy place.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
I I I
But
think I know what you're talking about.
yeah, that was a good week in Brazil.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But we'll leave that to a
Yeah.
pub
Yeah.
conversation.
And so so you had a great season that year, and then what happened the year after that?
Um, so that was actually like my first, like, so I had a good off season. I was able to like train and carry on. I was injury free, and um, so yeah, 2007, I had a
And would
few
you
podiums and a
would
couple
you
of
go
top
back to
tens.
Finland for the whole winter, or would you go to other
Yeah,
places?
the crazy thing is that I never really went, or New Zealand wasn't a hotspot destination to go to. I don't think there was that much riding going on. Like there
Yeah.
was, but the scene was
Not the
small.
same.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I would go to Tenerife and southern Spain.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely yeah. And maybe yeah, we went to California as well, like to ride like Laguna
Yeah.
and what's the other place? Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
So those were like the places that we would used to go. So if I look at some of the tracks and jumps and what they have in New Zealand now is just insane. Like it's, I wish I could go there one day and ride it, just because it looks phenomenal. And
Yeah,
it's
it
like
does.
you gotta get so much bike time and get to be so comfortable on your bike
Yeah.
and ride in good weather. And there are fast people who
Yeah.
you get to ride with.
Yeah.
So that definitely. But I think it shows nowadays. If you look at the times, everyone's the time gaps are very small
Yeah.
compared to what they used to be 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And everybody are riding like so fast and
Yeah.
so like incredibly well.
Yeah, it's just
But
it's evolved, and I think the you know the the division of, like, the very top riders to the middle pack World Cup riders, it's, the skill level is got smaller, hasn't it? The difference in skill level. Everybody's an insane bike rider now, and everybody's got a good bike. Everybody's got good tires.
yeah,
Everybody's training and putting effort in, and even if you're not on a factory team, people are going to other places in the off season to prepare. It's
yeah,
just even if you're not a factory rider, you kind of doing more factory things, I guess.
yeah. You're not gonna like, let's say you can't get a top 10 on like the hardest of rock bike park Michelins,
Yeah, no,
which are meant to last, and then like the low budget suspension and
yeah,
like it and sleeping in the 10
yeah,
at the bottom of Leogang, you're just not going to get 10.
no,
It just doesn't happen.
no, no. It's
um
no, it's I mean, obviously, at World Cup level, it's always been hard to get a good result, and there's always been massive amount of riders trying to achieve that. But yeah, it's definitely different times now. And do you do you do you think, just before we move on from the Honda, do you think if Honda made that bike again in 29 mullet, with the show suspension, with the current angles of all the downhill bikes now, which are all pretty similar, um do you think that bike would be as good as any of the bikes on the market now at the World Cups?
I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it would be, if they would put the effort in and the resources, I don't think it would be as much of a standout. But I think it would be, right up there.
Yeah.
From seeing what people are riding, I would say like Bruni's bike it's probably got as much like technology, and the suspension works just as well as our suspension worked at the time. Like if
Yeah.
if if I'd had to compare it to something what is out there nowadays, I would say Bruni's bike is equivalent to the Honda bike.
Sure. Yeah. And cool. Yeah. Well, who knows what will happen? Maybe they'll come back and do that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, that
Um,
would be pretty cool. Yeah,
and
but
so what? So then the following year you were still on Honda. So that's what, 2007,
7.
and your
Yeah,
teammates. There was you, Greg, Brendan,
yeah, and Brent. And then we had a satellite team. There was
Japanese rider.
a Japanese rider and then a Spanish youth. So, but they were actually testing to be or testing the production stuff. So there was, at least as far as I know, there was talks on bringing the bike to production. So they had different suspension and slightly different chassis on the bikes. And Brendan also had a different suspension to us, and not quite as much like the titanium bolts and like all the tricky stuff.
Okay.
What we had, like we had electric lockout and on the rear shock, which had a timer. So you just had to flick it on the bar, and it would be, the lockout will be set to your likenesses, whether it was 3 seconds to, I think, 5 seconds.
Was that mainly for the start?
That was mainly for the start, but then we used it on some tracks, like on the track. But
So
because
similar to what we saw Bruni doing at the Portugal World Cup a few years ago.
yeah, exactly. So I would like, I think my timer was set up to 5 seconds lockout, and I would usually, like, let's say, flick it on 3 seconds to go, that I would have the shock locked for, like, it would be locked in the start hut, that I wouldn't need to worry about it, and then it would be locked for the first 2 seconds, depending on the track. Because like I said, the bike wasn't particularly great at pedaling.
Yeah.
And had a really poor like acceleration. Once it was up to speed, it was fine, but like from zero to get it going, it was terrible.
Yeah.
And so that was just some of the technology that we had, and also like titanium bolts, and we had some like carved out bolts and hollow bolts just to change this chassis differences, just so they had the same mentality as what they have on a motocross side.
Yeah.
So we had like different pivot bolts for the frame and the gearbox, and you could change it. I don't remember too much what we prefer to ride, or how it was, but yeah, we tested like a whole bunch of different chassis stiffnesses.
Wow.
And but I think the project got to a halt when Brendan took the bike to Morzine for 3 weeks and didn't maintain it, or probably even wash it for one bit. And when he brought the bike back to the Japanese guys after being in Morzine for 3 weeks, they were absolutely petrified because the bike was destroyed. I don't think there was like one bit that was like reusable. And then they got like an understanding, like there's no one that could like keep the bike maintained, and like an average rider that could have the bike and have enough resources and parts to keep the bike up and running.
And do you think that was what ended the program to bring the bike to the public?
I don't think it ended it, but it was definitely a reality check to them, saying like, okay, if we bring these bikes out, that it would be near impossible for somebody to have it maintained,
sure,
or keep it in running order.
Yeah.
And that also, I don't know all the backstories, but that was definitely something which probably opened their eyes that maybe this might not be feasible to and worthwhile bringing the bike to open for public and for people to buy it.
Sure. Okay, so then what happened in that 2007 season then? How did that go for you guys, yourself?
That was 2007 is my best season ever. I ended up second overall after Sam, which I take huge pride of. Being second to Sam is pretty phenomenal.
Incredible.
And I took a
Sam
win.
Sam was at his best then.
Yeah, 100%. And he definitely like upped the level of riding, and kind of made everybody guess. I mean, doubt themselves. Like, okay, we got to up our game to be able to beat him.
Yeah.
And in one occasion, I was able to beat Sam with a bit of a tactic game, but
Yeah.
win is a win.
Yeah.
And I still had a good run
Yeah.
in Champri when Sam rode, which is still, I would say, it's one of the most impressive bike ridings that I've ever seen. Seeing when everybody else is like sliding on their butt, and then there comes Sam riding just his foot out and staying on the bike and making it look easy.
Yeah, it was same here. I was at that race watching that, and
Yeah,
it was you can't explain how impressive that run was.
no, because I'm pretty sure that my time is and was some maybe 5 seconds slower than Sam's qualifying winning run.
Yeah.
Pascal was second, and he also had a great result
Yeah.
in quali and was fast. But Sam like maybe beat the semis by nearly 10 seconds.
I was more, I think. I think it was like 14 seconds or something crazy.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember, but it was a huge margin. Like
Yeah.
Sam could have stopped on the track, carried on, and still won the qualies.
Yeah.
So I still, yeah, I was. So I had the second fastest time of the weekend. Let's say Sam's time is
Yeah.
still faster, but so I did like a tactic during the race because
Yeah.
I knew it had been raining prior to the race every night around, or every day around 3 o'clock. So
And was
within the
this
team,
your idea to do this, or was this a team idea?
there was a team idea.
Okay.
Like in case it rains, like somebody in the team would have a great result.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that the idea was approached to me. Like, what if you stop during qualifying for 10 seconds and you will qualify around mid pack? Obviously, it was super risky thinking
Yeah.
about it now.
Were
But
you
then
happy to do that?
I was, yeah, because I was so confident in my riding
Mm-hmm.
that I was like, okay, if I stop for 10 seconds, I can still easily qualify like around mid pack. But if I had to crash, obviously I would not qualify. So it was a bit of a gamble, which ended up paying off. And so by the time I was at the start gate, the rain had just started. It was just about to start, so it was drizzling a little bit. It was still dry when I rode, but I might have ended up using like a one tear off because there was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
raindrops in my goggles, but
Yeah.
it wasn't affecting me to
Too
like
much.
enough that it really slowed me down.
Yeah.
So PT, yeah, Steve was second,
Yeah.
and then Burrell I think was third. So and Sam was third, Burrell was fourth, and Mick Hanna might have been fifth.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think so. So, but anyway, that was also um something to remember. Totally different like winning experience than the one in Brazil, but still, yeah, definitely one of my favorite racing memories
Oh yeah,
as as well.
and and undoubtedly, arguably the hardest World Cup track to race on. That first year when there was no catch berms and all that, it was incredibly difficult to ride.
Yeah, true that it was.
So
Yeah,
much
like
steeper than all the other racetracks.
100%. To this day, still like super steep, and I don't think you would be able to like get some of the bottom bikes around some of those corners.
No,
Like,
that's something I wanted to discuss with you a bit later.
yeah,
So Matty, yeah, I think we're going to have to do this in two parts because it's super interesting. You've had an amazing career, so I think we'll call part one now, and then we'll come back and do um, the second part of your career next week if that's okay with you.
yeah, totally, yeah, for
All right.
sure.
Well, thanks everybody for listening to this podcast with Matti Lehikoinen. It's super interesting. I hope you've enjoyed it. Matty's got so many interesting things to talk about with his racing and his career and the bikes he's rode and the teams he's rode for. So hope you like it. If you like the podcast, please do all the like, subscribe, and all that stuff. And yeah, we'll speak to you next week, Matty, to finish this off. But thank you very much for coming on the Stay on Your Bike
Cool.
podcast.
Yeah, cheers, Pagey, and yeah, we'll speak to you next week.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.